As you know, there's a little over 5.5 weeks left to submit your film for the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. We're getting films almost every day now. Are we going to get yours? We hope so. Make a film. Find out something new about yourself. Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your Master of Fun and Wonder, your Viceroy of Verisimilitude, your Sommelier of Sci-Fi and Cinema, your Archbishop of Banterbury, your Chancellor of Cheerfulness, your Pharaoh of Physical Media, and, of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, all you kind souls, gentle beings across the landscape that we call the Post-Geek Singularity, you Imagination Connoisseurs, welcome to Robservations, episode number 538. My God, 538 episodes of this? Of my drivel? No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure everything I say is something that you just hang on my every word. No, I don't even know. I don't know where I was going to go with that. I have no material. I have no material today, although I was reading this comic. Keith Giffen wrote it. Amethyst, Princess of Gemworld. This issue 13, and it's a Crisis on Infinite Earths tie-in with Dr. Fate. Why was I reading this? Well, for whatever reason, I had it sitting here on my desk. Not a title I even collect. I think I probably pulled it aside because it reminded me that the only reason I ever bought Amethyst, Princess of Gemworld, not because of Dr. Fate, but because it was a Crisis on Infinite Earths tie-in, and I still have it 35 years later. It's actually in very, very good condition. It looks brand new, to be honest. You take it out of the bag. I mean, look at that. That is some choice 35-year-old comic action, let me tell you. This is quite, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It's not really worth any money. Maybe when I leave my entire comic collection on the side of the road, and that day is coming, and I am not kidding. Like 40 long boxes, I'm just going to put them on the side of the road. I will have been through them all, everything I want. The rest of it, just free comics. Take them away. I know, people are like, what? But, seriously, people, it's like, I go through the comics, I pull the ones I want. Most of it is just garbage. You even look at how much these things are worth. They're selling for like, $2. And if I wanted to, if we weren't in the middle of an ongoing COVID nightmare, I'd just one day say, hey, comic book sale, and sit by the side of the road and charge 50 cents for each of them. And, maybe I would make $1,000 or something if people bought comics. But on the other hand, if I just give them away and they're just by the side of the road, they'll be gone. And I won't have to deal with them anymore. Anyway, another thing. Let me tell you, I don't know if you guys know your Peter F. Hamilton, but I had never read his book, The Reality Dysfunction. It's the first of a trilogy. The Night's, hang on, let me get this. Yeah, The Night's Dawn. Now, this book has more imagination in the opening timeline than many books have during their entire page count. This book, yes, it's 1,100 pages long, but if the early going is any indication, this book is what they would call a rip-roaring yarn. It's definitely hard sci-fi. I love it. It'll get you through the end of the year if you're a slow reader. For me, I'll probably be done with it in a week, but it's pretty great. So Peter F. Hamilton is pretty great, but this book, I don't know why I had never read it before, and The Reality Dysfunction is one heck of a good title. Anyway, I thought I would just jump into it. I've got so many letters that I have backed up. Just 4 days of letters, really. I'm just going to jump into them and head right into your letters because there's so much to get through. I don't even know what to say. There's so much to get through. So, we shall see. This first letter comes from our chairman, Jeffrey Mao. That's right. Greetings, Rob. Logic dictates the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one. These words are regarded as an axiom by Spock, and therefore one would presume by many, if not all, Vulcans. Clearly, the idea was turned on its ear in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, when many sacrificed their careers and quite possibly their lives and freedom to save the one, in this case, the aforementioned Spock. It could be argued that the needs of the many, the crewmates of Spock, were directly tied to his needs, that is, to have his Katra properly returned to his home planet. The crew could have elected not to steal the Enterprise, leave their posts, and disobey orders, and while that would have satisfied one need, it probably would not have sat well with them at all that two of their beloved crewmates were still in anguish. While perhaps the idea of the crew having an emotional reaction to the death of Spock and the subsequent transfer of his Katra to McCoy might not have resonated with Vulcans, they probably would have understood the concept of unit integrity, of crew morale being important. Like you say, Rob, Vulcans have emotions. They have simply learned to control them. It would be logical to assume that any collection of people work better together if they all believe that they support each other and serve the common good. The needs of the many, therefore, to me, is not simply a summation of all of each individual's self-centered needs, but rather the needs of the collective many. I think that this is what Vulcans mean by this statement. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Jeffrey Mao. That's why you're the chairman. Therefore, it could be misinterpreted and twisted to mean that we can arbitrarily sacrifice the few as long as it benefits the many in any way. For example, to take this logic to a rather twisted extreme, imagine if some alien entity came to Earth and told them, if you give me 1,000 people to sacrifice, I will give 1,000,000 people 1,000 extra dollars a year for life. I mean, it does satisfy the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few axiom, right? $1,000 can go a long way, and that's a lot of money the entity is giving. Very generous considering that you only have to kill 1,000 people, but clearly this is a cruel distortion of the intent of the statement. While the above sounds extreme, we run into many such potential scenarios all the time. Let's try and speculate about how Vulcans would apply their philosophy of logic to managing current world situations. As you may have surmised, this is where I'm heading. Clearly, I speak most prominently of this current coronavirus pandemic, but really, it's not about the coronavirus pandemic specifically, but any crisis for which there is no clear and obvious answer. We are faced with a situation where we have neither the means technologically, medicinally, or therapeutically to completely eradicate or cure the virus. Logic would dictate at this point that the virus cannot be eradicated and that only containment is possible. There has never been a vaccine for a coronavirus. Therefore, the goal at this moment should be balancing the minimization of excess deaths from the virus, the ultimate needs of the few to simply live and not die from it, versus the needs of the many to feel safe, to be healthy, and to be able to carry on with their lives. The question is, do the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many, or the other way around? The confounding thing about this virus is that it spreads because of the masses of regular people going about and doing their normal everyday activities. So to stop the spread means to restrict the movement of people, their ability to gather, and the number of people they can gather with. However, by adopting this policy, this also impacts the needs of the many. I'm sure that you can appreciate the logical headache that we're in. The various policies adopted and proposed in many ways all seem to adhere to the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few axiom, but in starkly different ways. The current opposing viewpoint to the majority-held policy of masking, social distancing, and lockdown says the needs of the many to be able to freely go to work, school, maintain familial, social, and community bonds and connections, and have a semblance of a normal life outweighs the need to overly and unnecessarily restrict the spread of a virus that is so far proven to be far less lethal than was previously predicted. Yes, it does kill, but not anywhere near what was feared, and while it is still spreading, the increased spread of the virus throughout the community imparts immunity that cannot otherwise be granted in any other way. All of this has been established in the science of virology and epidemiology. On the other hand, logic would also suggest that if we know that the virus spreads through close and prolonged social contact, then imposing a shared burden on the populace to reduce travel and interactions could help to reduce cases and deaths. Unfortunately, the application of this policy in actual practice appears to have resulted in radically unequitable outcomes for different classes and groups of people. If we're talking about how the Vulcan leadership, the political and scientific elite, would approach a pandemic among their own people, it would probably be quite different here on Earth. The average Vulcan would be much more logical, better educated, and obviously less fearful of irrational risks and dangers. However, they cannot be immune to the effects of seeing neighbors, family, and friends getting sick and dying. To me, it would be logical to adopt a mix of strategies. They may be logical, but are not perfect and can certainly make mistakes. The leadership would probably find a populace much more willing to buy into their proposals because they better understand the situation and the dangers. The populace would also probably be much more able to self-govern and voluntarily restrict and distance themselves. We see examples of quarantine fever and people getting tired of it, and when things open up, they go overboard in terms of getting together and having parties and whatnot. Vulcans would probably not be affected by the isolation as much as humans, and also, I don't think their leadership would consider imposing the stricter measures seen here because they would understand the average Vulcan would be more able to take care of themselves. The other thing to remember is that the Vulcan population, with their better education and emotional control, could probably have eliminated the viral spread themselves without having to be told to do so. All of the things that we humans are told to do is because, well, we're human. We forget things, we get careless, we get impulsive. We never mean to get sick or catch a disease, but we do. I feel like Vulcans would have a logical, purposeful intent to their daily activities, constantly in an almost meditative state where they may have 100 things happening to them, but because they don't get stressed out, they're able to consistently maintain their daily habits and practices. Also, in an extreme situation, they would accept the need to change their lives and livelihoods because they see the logic in doing so and do not have emotional ties to the comfort that their previously normal lives gave them. Well, Rob, this has been a long letter already, but humor me a bit while I present a hypothetical dialogue between Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy and Spock discussing the pandemic. Damn it, Spock! People are dying out there! We have to do something! May I remind you, Doctor, of your basic virology? The virus has no intent, no will. It is not even defined as a living being. Its only purpose to carry out its genetic code, to reproduce as much as possible. If it kills a host, it does so unintentionally. So what would you tell the family of someone who dies from this? Sorry, the virus didn't mean to? In so many words, Doctor, yes. Why, you green-blooded, inhuman... You are most correct, Doctor. I am indeed not human, or at least, partly. Damn it, Spock, I know that! But doesn't your human half give you any feelings at all? It is not a feeling, but rather a fascination with the human desire to derive pleasure from performing activities that have been deemed to be potentially dangerous, if not fatal. The civilians continue to ignore our recommendations to physically distance themselves, despite knowing that correlates directly to increased risk of infection. Most illogical. Spock, you know, that might be the most human thing I've heard you say all day. And imagine my eyebrow lifting. I can't do it. Live long and prosper. The chairman. Well, Jeffrey Mao, you know what you've done with this letter? You've done what I've been doing like my entire life. Whenever I wonder about a problem or something that I'm personally facing, I always pretend that it has something to do with Star Trek. Doesn't matter what it is. And I try and run the scenarios like, if I was talking about this to Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, what would be the answers? By the way, I never think to myself, what if I was talking to Data, Worf, or Captain Picard? I always think about Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. As much as I do enjoy The Next Generation, I have to say that my go-to is Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. These are men of action. And I like this letter. That was a lot of fun to read, Jeff. What do you guys think? Look, you know, I think the real question is, you look at Asian countries like Korea, Japan, Taiwan, they're able to get a better containment on this. A lot of that is because they've dealt with things like SARS and MERS before, and wearing masks is not something that it's part of the culture. The real question is, how come America, we have so much more coronavirus in this country and so many more deaths than per capita, so many more deaths than any other place in the world? It's a little disconcerting. You know, where's the American wherewithal? You know, our ability to weather these storms. I don't know, but we're not doing a very good job. I love this letter, though. It was loads of fun. William La Rochelle writes in and says, Rob, on the topic of action figures, the best are those I can't believe are figures. I have a Travis Bickle and a Dexter Morgan. I, too, have a Travis Bickle. I'd say this in the chat, but the function isn't available when I'm on a cell. Well, William La Rochelle, I agree with you. I mean, I have to tell you, I think it was swag props. I don't know. I've been scouring even the toy stores where this is supposed to be. A company in Hong Kong has made an action figure set from the movie Lust, Caution, and guess who? Obviously, Tony Leung. There's a Tony Leung action figure who comes with a chair. I'm like, oh my God. Now, this is only a Hong Kong release. I don't know how I'm going to be able to track this down, but I have to track it down. I've looked at the normal sellers, can't find it listed anywhere. I got to have it. I mean, I have to have my man Tony Leung in a chair, sitting in a chair. I mean, he comes with his lady friend, too. I mean, Lust Caution's a great movie, but to have Tony Leung in a nicely tailored suit, an action figure, I mean, come on. The only thing that would make it better is if it was an In the Mood for Love action figure. But, you know, you could pretend it is. But no, Lust Caution's okay. Wow. I love when people make action figures you don't expect. I mean, I've got some pretty crazy action figures. I got a Caroline Munro from Star Crash. No one thought they were ever going to do that. And then I'm waiting. There's a Caroline Munro as Vampirella, which is crazy. But I do like when lesser-known figures... I mean, you know, finding my Ichi the Killer figure. Well, Ichi's fallen down, but those were pretty cool to have, too. You just never know what you're going to find when you're looking for action figures. I mean, I like to go to places like the Monkey Depot. That's right, Monkey Depot. If you go to Monkey Depot, they sell lots of crazy figures. They have a lot of, let's call them third-party figures that are unlicensed. So, indeed. Dean Mikitich all the way from the UK. Hi, Rob and the PGS. First of all, let me state, I can't stand the state of Star Trek since 2005. The Trek I've liked since then have all been non-official fan films. I don't see Discovery or Picard as canon, and if they are, it's not related to Star Trek pre-2005. It's an alternate universe which is linked to the Kelvin timeline, and it also explains why the Mirror universe is so different to the one seen in TOS and Enterprise. Now with Lower Decks... Did I all out hate the show? No. I found parts of it enjoyable, but the humor came across as the joke itself. Personally, I don't think this sort of humor is right for Star Trek and just does not work for a Star Trek show or movie. Away from Trek, fine. I didn't laugh or smile at one joke through the whole season, with the exception of Mariner's secret being revealed as they are beaming onto the bridge. I saw that joke coming from a mile away, and it still made me laugh, though. All the references to classic Trek also got tiresome very quickly, but I don't think there were any to Discovery or Picard, which in and of itself was a good thing. Forgetting now this show is meant to be a comedy, I love the idea of the show premise of a second contact ship. After the first few episodes, the show does not really explore this concept. For most of the season, they have done very little in the way of second contact and seem more of a cargo ship than anything else, moving goods and people from one place to another. And when they do second contact, they drop in and drop out very quickly. Now, in reality, if Starfleet was doing second contact, the ship would not be there for a few days to a week. It would spend months there. There'd be an entire department of diplomats on the ship working with this civilization to build relationships with the Federation. There would also be lots of other things going on as well. The show creators wanted to do standalone stories, and I get that, but this could have been achieved with everything being set around one planet or civilization. The B story could have been the episodic second contact, while the main episode story would be the zany antics that the Lower Decks crew got up to. As for the USS Cerritos being one of the worst crews in Starfleet, if that were the case, Starfleet would have pulled the command away from the captain and possibly taken the command crew off the ship as well, and installed people that would whip the crew back into shape and bring them back into being the best of the best. After all, Starfleet is a quasi-military organization. Its main charter is to explore the unknown, but it also does diplomatic jobs amongst many other roles outside of exploration and defense of the Federation. This is why it has a command structure with ranks. If we were to look at the Starfleet as an organization in our world, NASA would be the closest example. It has a ranking system for a command structure, but its primary job not to get things into space, but also to look back on our own world and study it so we can move forward. Finally, is Lower Decks canon? The show does not fit in with Discovery and Picard and seems to have no real links to either of those. Is it canon to pre-2009 Star Trek? With the exception of the look and style of the show, I would say no. Why, again, does it not fit with those shows or films? Can you really see this sort of thing happening in any of them? No. Not as it should not fit with the universe that was built. It does not follow the rules of those shows that they created. It has no verisimilitude with them. If you want to call it canon, that's fine. It's just an alternate universe away from classic Trek. Peace and long life, Dean Mikitich. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that. Again, it just fits in with another piece of modern Star Trek that it isn't Star Trek. Star Trek is kind of its own genre, and modern Star Trek is not really, since 2009, has not been really a part of that genre. It's been a pastiche of standard science fiction shows. I mean, even the season opener of Discovery was an amalgamation of 20 other things. And I'll tell you what, upon reflection, the opening of Star Trek Discovery Season 3, what I really don't like is next time you watch it, or if you haven't watched it yet, count how many people die. Just count how many people die. Modern Star Trek is a show where murder is something that happens with very, very frequently, and no one seems to pay much attention to it. How many people did they kill in that episode? And I'm sorry, that's just not Star Trek. People are there's a reason that the firearms had stun settings, that phasers were set to stun. And also, and I've been thinking about this in terms of Star Trek Discovery, the idea that, okay, let's run down the idea that all dilithium exploded at once, the burn. Well, how would that affect Federation member planets? They didn't go anywhere. It's not like there's dilithium all over the place on Earth, and they can still talk to everybody. And this idea that there's no more Federation, how many planets the Federation, it makes no sense at all. It's just a stupid idea that they came up with and said, it doesn't really matter. We're going to call it the burn, and there's no more dilithium. Like, we don't have any fuel. As I said, there's so many different ways of traveling around the galaxy. It's just, again, it's not wealth. I'll tell you, you know what they need? A little Peter F. Hamilton in their diets. That's what I say. Modern Star Trek, it's really dumb. And it's being written by people that don't know anything about science fiction. So they'll come up with an idea like, ooh, all dilithium blew up. It's a metaphor for no more fossil fuels or something. I don't know what it is, but it's dumb. Dumb. Omar94 is here. Omar says, "Hi, Rob. Something I've noticed with Asian cinema is how there is a lot of English dubbing, while foreign films from other countries really don't do that, like French or Italian films. I just saw a 1993 Jackie Chan film called Crime Story, but it was an English dubbed version rather than the original form where there would be English subtitles. I don't know why English dubs are done for some Asian films. I know there are some people who don't like watching movies with subtitles, and there are some who have difficulty catching up since they have to look down to read the subtitles and might miss what is happening on screen. Maybe the movie should not be dubbed, but place the subtitles somewhere else rather than at the bottom of the screen, like on the right or left side of a person talking. That would make it easier for people to follow. Crime Story is just one example of an English dub, and plenty other Asian films do that, like some Studio Ghibli movies from Japan, as I've seen a few English dub versions of the Ghibli movies. Not all of them do, as I have seen both The Killer and Hard Boiled in their original form with English subtitles. Thanks, and live long and prosper." Well, when it comes to Chinese language movies, you've got both Mandarin and Cantonese. And then, because Hong Kong was a British colony, they would dub movies into English a lot. And that's, and also Italian films, for instance, were shot MOS, mid-out sound. They would be shot, the actors would, I guess they would record a guide track or whatever, but they wouldn't really record sound to be used. It was all post-synced. They synced sound later. That's why sometimes when you're watching the spaghetti Western movies, the dialogue doesn't match up. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of, because of the English territories, there's a lot of Asian cinema that gets dubbed and exported to other places around the world. But I don't like watching dubbed movies. The only Asian movie that I watch that's dubbed is Shogun Assassin. That's the only one, because Shogun Assassin is a amalgamation of the 6 Lone Wolf and Cub movies, and frankly, Sandra Bernhard does like all the female voices in Lone Wolf and Cub. I mean, in Shogun Assassin, it's hilarious. And I think the kid who does the producers, the 2 guys who brought it to America and made the American version of Shogun Assassin, one of their sons, they just sat him down and told him what to say, and then he would repeat it. It's still the greatest child dialogue, I guess you call it dialogue performance of all time. If you guys haven't seen Shogun Assassin, do yourselves a favor, because it's one of the greatest things ever created. And I understand, not to take away, I've got the Lone Wolf and Cub box set right over there. I've got the original versions, but Criterion, in their infinite wisdom, if you get the Lone Wolf and Cub box set, they included Shogun Assassin, and I'm telling you, it's just a thing of beauty. Doc Vader is here. Doc Vader says, "Hi, Rob. Thank you again for reading my last letter regarding film photography. I do enjoy the slower process compared to the instant gratification of the technology of today. It would be hypocritical for me to say that I do not use a digital camera, as I do so in digitizing my negatives to be converted to a positive image. Anyhow, here are some more photography or photographer movies. We start with Buster Keaton's The Cameraman from 1928. Buster plays a tiny type photographer who is trying to impress a girl working in the news. He uses all of his savings to buy a motion camera and hilariously tries to shoot current events to compete with other news cameramen. Next up, we have Fernando Morea's City of God. I love City of God. From 2002. It's a coming-of-age story of 2 boys, one Rocket, an aspiring photographer, and the other Z Pequeno, a troubled youth during a life of crime. Set in the slums of Brazil and a long ongoing gang war in where Rocket doesn't want to be a part of either, and he just wants to take pictures but keeps getting entangled in this power struggle in the City of God. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty from 2013 stars Ben Stiller as a negative asset manager for Life magazine. For the young ones, Life was an American weekly magazine that covered general interest, but is known for its photographs of different world events, such as World War II. With the closing of the magazine, Walter Mitty, a daydreamer, decides to escape his usual life and tries to track down a legendary photojournalist who recommended his film negative to be used in the magazine's last issue. We move on to the Australian movie Proof from 1991. It stars Hugo Weaving as a blind photographer who relies on another person's honesty to describe the photo he's taken. Drama ensues when he meets a young Russell Crowe who starts a friendship and gets involved with Weaving's obsessed housekeeper. Finally, let us cap off with the horror Shudder from 2008. This is a remake of the Indonesian original of the same title. Newlyweds Joshua Jackson and Rachel Taylor discover disturbing images from the images they had developed during their honeymoon after an apparent accident. As they investigate further, the mysterious manifestations lead to secrets better left unsolved. I hope you can share some of your photography from before if you still had them. Would love to have a look. You know what? I got to tell you, I mean, I took pictures, but I didn't take very many pictures, not like I do now. But I have pictures, I mean, I don't know if it's funny that you say that because I was looking at these pictures, but I didn't take them. I mean, yeah, this is from 1996. I don't know if you can see it, but this is a picture I took of my biological mother. I took that picture. There's my biological mother the first time we had met her, and that's in her office in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand. That's my biological mom, Linda Rungo. I just happen to have that right here. I didn't even know you were going to ask about photographs, but there you go. Yeah. And you know what? I've got another letter from Dean Mikitich. I'm rallying through all the letters, man. If you sent me a letter and I got it in the queue, I'm going to read it. Hi, Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. I just watched Archive. It is a 2020 British science fiction film written and directed by Gavin Rothery. Rothery is best known as the concept and graphic artist for the film Moon. Archive is his directorial debut. It was originally set to premiere at South by Southwest in March of 2020, but was canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It instead received a digital release with limited screenings in theaters around the United States on July 10th. I'd never heard about this film. It was not, if it was not for my father-in-law, it would have passed me right by. I normally catch wind of these smaller budgeted movies from their trailers being shown on the Movie Trailers channel here on YouTube. Without giving too much away, Archive is about George Almore. He is working on a true human equivalent AI, and his latest prototype is almost ready. This sensitive phase is also the riskiest, as he has a goal that must be hidden at all costs. Archive is a great little look at AI, but also delves into love and loss, and the pain and joy it can bring us. Theo James and Stacey Martin are the two main stars of the film, and their performances are excellent. The style and look of this film is very similar to Moon, but I guess that's to be expected. All in all, this is well worth a watch. You can view this film from Amazon, though it is not on Prime, so you'll have to rent it or buy a digital copy. So, Rob, these days the cinemas were packed with $200. So, Rob, these days the cinemas used to be packed with $200 million films where you just take your brain out and drool while watching the visuals pass you by on the big screen. Films like Archive and Please Stand By and your own Free Enterprise barely got a theatrical run, and due to their low marketing budget, if they had any, hardly get noticed by the general public. It's only by chance that you stumble across them. Once cinema starts to reopen again, I can't see people running back to them, at least not until COVID has been beaten. After all, when the cinemas were open and the chance of getting COVID was small, the majority of people stayed away, which means it's unlikely that we will see a blockbuster film on the big screen anytime soon. When one does drop, the other studios will be watching to see how it does. If the numbers don't turn out to see it, don't be surprised for everything to be pushed back again. So do you think that we could get to see more of these smaller budgeted films that normally fly under the radar and get to be on a large number of theaters for longer run times in them while the big blockbusters stay away? Being of a smaller budget and slow burn in theaters, I can see them making their budget back and also making a decent profit. Thanks and long life, Dean Mikitich. Well, that's a good question. I have to tell you, I haven't seen it yet, but the movie that is at the top of my must-see list right now, well, Tenant's up there, but even above Tenant is Possessor Uncut, Brandon Cronenberg's second film after his first film, Antiviral, which I actually own on Blu-ray. I can't wait to see Possessor, and it bothers me that I haven't seen it yet. It bothers me I haven't seen Tenet either. But, yeah, I mean, look, when I was growing up, like I go to the Crossroads Cinema, the great soda stick fourplex that we had up in Bellevue, Washington, and you could go see Dressed to Kill, or you could go see the American version of The Beyond, Seven Doors of Death. You could see a Hollywood comedy. I mean, they were all playing together. You'd have all these different films playing in this fourplex, and I saw all kinds of things. Nowadays, a lot of these smaller movies and movies that wind up on streaming would be playing in theaters. I don't know if that's ever going to if it's ever going to go back to being that way. I don't know, but I do miss the diversity of films. I mean, we can go to art house cinemas and see, there's a Laemmle's that's close to here, and I would go see art films or foreign films there, but it's tough. I mean, we don't have that diversity of film going that we used to in terms of having theaters like the way it was when I was a kid, which is a bummer. Ian Samuels has a letter. Ian says, Rob, fellow Robservationists, recently I have somehow injured the tube that leads into the stomach just above the stomach, so eating, drinking, standing, and walking has been painful. So, to distract myself, here's a letter about Star Trek villains or adversaries. It is commonly accepted that the main long-running adversary for Kirk in the original series was the Klingons, in a similar way as Romulans became for Picard. For Sisko, it may have started as the Cardassians, then perhaps more so with the Jem'Hadar, although it was more general to the Dominion. Of course, there is the formidable Borg. So, of all of these, which are more dangerous? Well, the Borg were capable of causing a lot of damage and devastation with a single Borg cube, but as the tales from other races, including the Enterprise D's barkeeper Guinan's race, the Illurians, of attacks from hundreds of Borg cubes, So why, when they have attacked Earth, it's only been with a single cube? I would like to suggest to others, along with the Borg, first is the Xindi from Enterprise, who attacked the Earth, leaving a huge gouge near the Pacific coast of the United States, and amongst the massive death toll was Commander Trip Tucker, the Enterprise's chief engineer's younger sister. The other race is the Breen, who joined the Dominion in part of the Dominion War. Not only did they have a powerful plasma weapon which disabled just about every ship in the combined Starfleet, Klingon and Romulan fleet, except for a few old Klingon warbirds, but they directly attacked Earth too, devastating Starfleet headquarters. I think the Breen were a great addition to the pantheon of Star Trek adversaries, particularly as there is still much mystery about them. Why do they wear refrigeration suits when their homeworld's climate is temperate? We still know little of their awesome-looking ships and weaponry. They are quite possibly one of the most underrated Star Trek adversaries ever. Thanks, Ian. Hey, I love the Breen. I think you're right about that. We need to learn more about them. I don't think we will from the people who run the franchise now. If you were to say to them, hey, what about the Breen? They're going to be like, the who? The what? What are you talking about? Oh, well, what can you do? It's a bummer. It's a bummer. Victor Rosario Fermaint wrote in. Fermaint. I want to say it's Fermain. I know it's like a French last name, but Victor, I'm sorry. I know that I keep forgetting to read your last name correctly. Dear Rob, the poster contest. I've always written to you and to the connoisseur crew of the USS Imagination as a fan of comics and cinema. But professionally, I am an illustrator, graphic designer, writer, currently working as a call center supervisor. Therefore, I only have the weekends to do anything creative, whether it's painting, comic book making, talking about movies, playing endless release date hopscotch on my infant, Lights Camera Super Action Show, it's the Lights Camera Super Action Show YouTube channel, and lately learning more challenging artistic expressions. I'm sorry that I didn't submit anything to the poster contest for the upcoming first annual Imagination Connoisseur Film Festival, but every idea I came up with felt either too pedestrian or unoriginal, and for this kind of job, concept is king. I had already seen several poster designs, but today, during my coffee break, I finally sneaked a peek to see every competing poster. I have to say that I was floored by the sheer number of entries and their overall quality. I was very impressed with an anonymous piece of a man dressed in black and white square patterns, a hat, and shades. I also liked very much Jason Spriggs' exploding head design, which won, and Shane Fogarty's red, black, and white detective story design. Shane's robot and black cat piece was fantastic and almost had my vote. Having said that, I finally voted for Jim Tripp Sanders' sci-fi flavored poster. The filmmaking scenario and that bold green half-film roll logo with the flowing lettering against a red and black sky was love at first sight. Big round of applause for these artists and everyone who participated. As always, happy to be an Imagination Connoisseur crewman in the Starship USS Imagination, Captain Burnett. That's from Victor Rosario Fermaint from Bailon, Puerto Rico. Well, Victor, thank you for that. Once again, it's all of you. It's all of you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. It's all of you who make all of these things possible. And we're having another contest, so Victor, get on it. Beginning December 2nd, we are having the book cover design contest. You have all of December. The contest ends on December 31st at 11:59. And remember, we are in conjunction with the short story competition that we're having. We are publishing a book called The Imagination Connoisseurs that is going to be comprised of stories that you write. I actually might write one as well, because I don't think that it would be fair if I didn't. So I'm going to write one as well, I believe. But the book is going to be called The Imagination Connoisseurs, and basically the premise of the story is, what does that mean? What does it mean to be an imagination connoisseur? I don't even know. You have to figure out what it means. Then you have to come up with a story that helps you explain what you mean by that, which means you can pretty much write anything. But so the book is going to be called The Imagination Connoisseurs, and from December 2nd to December 31st, we are going to have another contest to design the book cover. Now, here's the thing. It's going to be a dust jacket, and I'm going to have to figure out what the actual dimensions of all of these things are going to be. And I'll give you, because I would love, design that wraps all the way around the book. It doesn't have to be, but it would be kind of cool if it was. I'll have to probably give everybody a spec sheet. And I will promise you that I will have that by December 2nd. So we'll give you a template that you'll use to design the cover. But and then of course the short stories are due Valentine's Day, and then the most exciting part of the contest is that the winning actually it might not necessarily be the winning story, but it's going to be one of them. One of the stories we're going to include the winning entries in a book. Obviously, we're going to make a book, and we're going to turn one of them. I mean, if the winning story is set on the rings or in the rings of Saturn, it's going to be really hard to do that. But the plan is to take. Well, I know we're going to do a movie. We're going to take one of the stories, hopefully the winning story. But then again, I don't want your imagination to be. I want it unfettered. I want your imagination unleashed. Don't worry about it. And if it does take place in the rings of Saturn, we'll figure that shit out. What we're going to do is from March 1st to May 15th, we are going to turn one of those stories into a movie. And I will be taking you all on the journey with me to make it into a film. 2.5 months in and out. Because, real producers who produce movies, who know what they're doing, can do that. You should be able to make a short film in 2.5 months, soup to nuts. I worked on one. It was after the money was raised. It was a Star Trek fan film called Prelude to Axanar, directed by Christian Gossett and edited and basically post-supervised by, me. And we finished it from the time the money was raised in 2.5 months. That's pretty much it. That's how you make movies. Anybody that knows what they're doing. So there you go. That's the plan. It's the new contest. But I don't want to take away from the contest that we're running now, because we've still got more than 5 weeks left for the first annual. Oh, wait. Let me remember. If you don't remember, it is the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival this year. And, we got Trinidad the Island Man has a film coming up, and you'll be seeing that this week. And hopefully a couple more movies to share with you. But I have to warn you, when you watch Trinidad the Island Man's movie, have some hankies handy, just so you know. You've been warned. That's all I'm going to say. So there you go. Let's see what's next here. This one comes from Pedro Ferreira. Ferreira? I think it's and I know it's Pedro Ferreira. I think it's Ferreira. I'm saying it right? Uh-oh. Speaking of Axanar. Hi, Rob. I would just like to preface this letter by saying it's about Axanar, and I have some questions about it. I hope it's okay to ask you. Second paragraph is where it gets a little personal, so just to give you warning. I have to say I really enjoyed watching the work you did with Axanar. I had no idea you were so hands-on on that project. I liked the clips you posted. For a fan film, the effects look pretty okay, perhaps just needed a little less shaky camera work. While looking at the video, I came across another one where you talk about your involvement in Axanar and how it went down. It's the one where the dog gets angry, sharing your frustration. I saw most of the video, and I tried to keep an open mind about this, as obviously your point of view will have some bias. Really? Nevertheless, it was an amazing listen. I can't believe Alec Peters never paid you a salary. Oh, but he did. Of course, he doesn't say that. If you had that in a contract, could you not take him to court? But a coffee shop? Why? I know a couple of skeptics in the comments of that video didn't believe you did it just for the love of Star Trek. I did not. They think you must have gotten paid at some point, which didn't involve expenses for your computer or car. According to their YouTube page, Axanar surprisingly is still in development, and Alec Peters has taken it upon himself to not just write and produce the film, but also star in it as well. Looking at his credits, or lack of, it came as a shock to me that he had acting talent. Well, does he? Not trying to unnecessarily put the guy down, but maybe IMDb isn't listing everything he did, so I'm ignorant. No, it's listing everything he did. It all went crazy when CBS went after Axanar. No fan film afterwards was safe. I mean, when the fans are producing better content than your own company, it does look embarrassing. Yet, what CBS did was underhanded, and obviously the results of that gave you a slightly bad reputation amongst fans. Sure, you didn't do a Star Citizen and raise $300 million for a game that still years later hasn't come out, but there was a lot of hate toward the film. I see your detractors in the discus comments of TrekCore who speak ill of you and others, really not because of Axanar, but because you dislike current Star Trek. Axanar is mostly used as an excuse. Your involvement and apparent loss of a career tragic. They dislike your association with people within the fandom menace. They have it's an either us or them attitude, which seems very un-Star Trek-like. Then again, these are the same people who think Mr. Plinkett is real. Having said that, I have some questions about you I hope you don't mind answering. I do not. Why do you go freelance? Isn't being a freelancer financially unstable compared to getting a stable job doing something? You've said in the past you can be difficult to work for. Does it have something to do with that, or are you just joking? I have Asperger's, so I am a fish out of water understanding people. I know that it's impossible to make everyone like you. Do you have tips for handling online criticism for people who think they know better than you? While people at CBS get annoyed with you for your discussions on the franchise with these podcasts, what are their reactions to letters like mine or other Imagination Connoisseurs? When Axanar was taken to court by CBS, we of course saw the impact it would have on fan films in general. CBS wasn't happy with the Star Trek branded merchandise being sold without their consent. I never had a dog in the race, and I still don't. The directing style and the story in terms of when it's set just isn't my thing, although I'll happily watch the final film. I guess I really did care, however, with the end result of Axanar getting sued, with CBS quickly compiling a nonsense set of rules because, as in a lot of fans' minds, one fan film spoiled it for everyone else. Oh, it's not just the fact that films can be only 15 minutes each, but that one moronic rule in particular whereby fan films aren't allowed to look professional. CBS essentially crippled fan films. But do you want to know what the worst results of all this was? CBS used these guidelines for fan films as an excuse to DMCA Star Trek Fan Simulation Stage 9. They hadn't broken any rules. So what if the game showed up Ubisoft substandard VR game? What he's talking about now, what Pedro's talking about is there was a bridge simulator that was made by fans, basically, where you could literally go around the inside of the entire Enterprise D, and CBS pulled it. It was basically free. The developers had taken that into account and had taken the step to postpone development to allow sales of the Bridge Crew VR game to continue. They had figured this out in due time. They did no wrong, but who would protest against a billion-dollar company who could sue them anyway? It was a nasty joke. They played on those developers, and we fans paid the price. I'm a big fan of The Next Generation. Since I was 8, I dreamt about walking the halls of the Enterprise D and visiting all the rooms we never saw in the show. I never even knew there was a main shuttle bay until Stage 9 came along. Stage 9 was, for me at least, the best thing to come out of the franchise since the 90s. Us fans always looked for great Star Trek moments or experiences, one that will become a happy memory, but however hard we try, the best we manage is okay. It's like that with most franchises. For 3 or 4 posted updates on their YouTube channel, I saw my dream come true in front of my eyes, and it was amazing, glorious, as the Klingons would say. But now it's gone due to CBS overreacting. CBS wants good Star Trek content, but I don't think they're aiming for that. CBS doesn't like nice things. Kind regards, Pedro. Well, Pedro, since you've asked me a lot of questions about myself, I will answer them. First of all, I did do long pieces on Axanar, but I got involved with the Axanar project originally when they were doing Prelude to Axanar. For those of you who've never seen this, Prelude to Axanar was a Star Trek fan film that was going to be it was a proof of concept for a feature film that we were going to make afterwards. And it was going to be directed by Christian Gossett. Prelude to Axanar was directed by Christian Gossett, a friend of mine who did a comic book called The Red Star. Christian Gossett also was the guy who designed the double-bladed lightsaber, believe it or not, when he was working for Star Wars, Dark Horse Comics. And so I did not know Alec Peters, who came up with the idea of Prelude to Axanar. It was his thing. And I just knew Christian, and they brought me in because at the time I was working on the Star Trek The Next Generation documentaries and the Enterprise documentaries for the Blu-ray. And Christian knew I was an editor, and they needed an editor. So they raised $100,000. They thought they were going to get $10,000. They raised $100,000. And Christian's company, his friend's company, Metamorphic, Jennifer Weberly and Metamorphic produced the shoot for Prelude to Axanar. Christian directed it. It was a 3-day shoot, two days in the stage and then a pickup day. And then I cut it all together. And Tobias Richter did the visual effects. And I was given an incredible amount of creative leeway in putting the film together. Now, make no mistake, I did not direct Prelude to Axanar. Christian Gossett directed it. He came up with the idea of shooting the side profiles based on a movie called Facing Ali that cinematographer Milton Santiago suggested to him. And it was a lot of fun. And from the time Prelude, they raised the money, then we set up the shoot. The shoot went off without a hitch, really, really quick. We had Richard Hatch and Tony Todd and Gary Graham. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And then I got to put it together for 2.5 months, and in and out. They gave me, there was no narration, for instance. I said, let's come up with narration. I asked for some effect shots that we didn't have, and I was able to get those. And we put together Prelude to Axanar, and we premiered it at San Diego Comic-Con in 2014. And everything was great. And for me, why did I do it? Well, I did it because it seemed fun. You know, I build Starship models anyway, and this was kind of like making a movie. And I felt when I got involved, the production crew that ran it was great. It all went out it went off without a hitch. And if you see the documentary, I also made, at the same time, before I started editing the movie, I also shot all the behind the scenes. I did behind the scenes interviews with the cast to be later turned into a documentary because I produced the Blu-ray, special edition Blu-ray, and the DVD. Now, when I first started, everybody was getting paid because it was a paid gig. Now, when I first met Alec, it was very loosey-goosey in terms of I wasn't really getting paid. And as Alec would say, you know, he was loaning me money, but he was using all my equipment, using my time for 2.5 months. And I used my own cameras. And I mean, normally what I was doing for this project, I would get paid thousands of dollars to do. My usual fee on DVD special features material was I used to charge people $1,500 per minute of finished programming. So if I made a half-an-hour documentary, it was a $45,000 job. But, you know, I mean, that it seems like, oh, that's pretty good money. It's not great money, but it's pretty good money. But you might, you know, when I was doing The Usual Suspects, we had to travel all over the place to get interviews. And you've got to hire local crews, and you have to go places. So your money gets gobbled up quickly. So I did a 45-minute documentary on the making of Prelude to Axanar. And how much would that normally cost? How much was that worth? And when Alec Peters was getting donations, what happened was we used Prelude to Axanar to get money, to crowdfund money for the feature film. And we did that. And Prelude to Axanar garnered like $600,000 or something like that. And then we were going to make, one of the perks was getting this Blu-ray. I ran a poster contest for that Blu-ray. I worked a long time on all that work. And what ended up happening was that Alec Peters is he wants the accolades of being a movie producer without doing the work. And he doesn't know how to do the work. And so what he was doing at first was he got rid of all the people that effectively produced Prelude to Axanar. And that was the biggest problem. You know, he wanted to be the guy in charge when he shouldn't have been. He was suddenly getting tons of money in. That money, there was no oversight. He got the money. He thought of it as his personal money. And then I stayed on the project because we were making a movie. You know, and the idea was at this point, I was going to just edit the film. And then tensions between Christian and Alec reached loggerheads because Christian, he had a great production team that, here's the thing. If you have a great production team that you saw they've done good work, we made Prelude to Axanar without a hitch, you keep that team, period. You know, the idea that it was why would you get rid of them? I don't know. So then what happened was I stuck with the project because we were still making a movie. I was doing other things, for instance. And then, I stuck with the project because we had taken in hundreds of thousands of dollars of fan money to make this movie. So I felt like I was obligated. And yes, I mean, should have been paid for my time. I was working a lot. And according to Alec, he loaned me money. Call it whatever you want. But the fact was, I was working on the Axanar project for 3.5 years. And in October of 2015, I came on board Axanar full-time, full disclosure, for $3,000 a month. That's how much I was making, which was just enough to cover my nut and work on the project. So that's all I needed. Now, that was October of 2015. We got sued on December 31st or December 30th, 2015. So 2 months later, CBS sued the project. And I had been working on all the visual effects sequences and a lot of the design work that we were doing before we shot. So I was going to have all the effects sequences done first so we could caress the live action. And Christian, he had left the project. I was directing. And the first thing I directed was the Vulcan scene. So, yeah, and then it got all nutty. And then when the settlement, the CBS settlement, by the way, you can read all of this, the CBS settlement now. Alec Peters has continually sued people, including me. He's come after me twice legally, saying he loaned me all this money and that I stole his digital assets. I mean, I copied everything at the behest of me. I made him buy me 2 hard drives. I copied everything that I had created for Axanar, and they were on his desk for 6 months, those drives. And he claimed I never gave them to him. Well, I've got photographic and video evidence of those drives sitting on his desk. Now, I can't prove that I had done that, but I did, because I needed a copy of them stored away safe, because I only had the drives I had. And then when Alec decided to move to Atlanta, we packed up the studio. I left, he left, and presumably I thought he had all of these things because I copied them for him. Well, now he says I stole all these digital assets. Well, one, I don't have a work for hire agreement. Everything I created is essentially mine. That's how things work when you're a cinematographer and you shoot things. If you're not working for somebody, if you're not being paid to do something for someone, it's not theirs. So I just kept everything because I had everything on my hard drives. I don't throw anything away in case you need something. And since I left the project in 2017 when we got the when the lawsuit was finished. What I had suggested doing, my course of action was, well, we were going to make the movie in sections, and I was gearing up to direct the first 30 to 45 minutes of the movie. I said, let's do that, because we'd already done the prelude to Axanar, the faux documentary. I said, let's shoot the first 30 to 45 minutes of the movie. We'd been building the sets. We had the assets. I'd shot the Vulcan scene. I had a lot of the VFX shots. So we could have done that and done the first half of the movie, and we would have been done. And we would have had a narrative, a piece of really, I think, would have been really good narrative to show people and do some more work with it. I don't know. Maybe CBS would have liked that and said, hey, guys, why don't you continue? But whatever. So I bear CBS, let me be clear, I bear CBS no ill will about this at all. They were protecting their IP. I mean, what we should have done was taken the money, shut up, and made the film, rather than talk about it. It's 5 years later, and Alec Peters still hasn't made 2 15-minute shorts. I could make those 2 15-minute shorts next weekend if I started planning them now, but he hasn't been able to do that. I left the project in November of 2017 because my suggestion was shot down because Alec Peters wanted to make 2 more shorts. And I said, yeah, but we've already done that. So that's never what we were going to do. We were always going to make these things. So that's where Axanar is now. But I love CBS. I worked for them for 3 years. It was fantastic. I had more fun working on the Next Generation and Enterprise Blu-rays than almost any job I've ever had in my life. It was incredible. I mean, I was able to do so many things and interview the entire cast and crew and so many writers and people that were involved in making Next Generation and Enterprise. It was a dream job. I mean, if you buy the Season 2 Blu-ray set, I am hosting a roundtable discussion with the entire cast of Next Generation. I mean, that was a dream come true. And it was all because Ken Ross at CBS had the foresight to do all of these things. And it was incredible. It was an incredible time. I loved it. So in terms of, there's a lot of people, and if people don't like me, that's fine. I mean, I've been in the fan community for a long time, but I have I was not sued by CBS personally. I only the project and Alec Peters were sued. I had nothing to do with the lawsuit. I mean, I saw what went on peripherally, but I bear CBS no ill will. I mean, the fact is, if we just shut up and made the movie, Star Trek fan films had been being made for a long time, but, we were making product. As fans, we were making cool things that we thought other fans would like. I mean, when I was growing up, I bought so much unlicensed Star Trek product, blueprints, resin model kits. I mean, people made them because nobody else was making them. But now there's a lot more, as far as Star Trek licenses and things like that, a lot more money at stake. As for my detractors in the discus comments of TrekCore did one of the best interviews I think I've ever done. They did a 5-part interview with me. And there are people, there are people that do not like me because of my opinion about Star Trek Discovery. And that's fine. I can't change people's opinions of me. But look, if you want to discuss Star Trek Discovery with me, I'll tell you what I think is wrong with the show. I'm never going to attack you personally because you like Star Trek Discovery. But all of these people, it's all personal to them. And it's all personal attacks and people coming back and attacking me personally, which that's okay if it doesn't really help your cause. So dislike me all you want. But I'm proud of the work that I tried to do with Axanar. One of the things that I wanted to do as far as those there's 3 documentary pieces up on the Burnettwork where you can watch what I was doing with Axanar before we were sued and where I was trying to take the film. And the reason that I put those documentary pieces up, which, by the way, Alec Peters has downloaded and used on his own channel, while he'll tell you that I did no work. Well, he's taken my work whole cloth and used it. And, according to him, I've never been paid for the work I did. So it's really not his to do anything with, but he has, and that's fine. But anyway, you can watch those pieces and you can see what I was trying to do with the film. I have another epic hour-long documentary that I'll drop soon about how I made the Vulcan scene, with help, obviously. But, and as for they dislike, first of all, why does anybody dislike my association with people at the Fandom Menace channel? Like, I understand that, but, I am not, nor is this channel affiliated with the Fandom Menace, but I'll tell you something. The Fandom Menace people treat me a lot better than those people on the TrekCore Discus page giving me a hard time. I've never been insulted by them. Whether I've gone on Jeremy's channel from Geeks and Gamers, whether I go on to Midnight's Edge, or whether I talk to Doomcock or anybody, I've always been treated with great respect by those people. And I was a fan of, say, Midnight's Edge before I even knew them. I watched their Star Trek stuff. I watched their videos that they made. I appreciated the time and effort they put in. And for everybody who's a detractor of that, go watch Andre's video about how excited he is to see Dune. I mean, all this acrimony in the fan community. For those of you who might not know, the 3 former Axanar directors, myself, Paul Jenkins, and Christian Gossett, we have band together. And we are making a documentary. We've announced it as being 9-part. I would suspect it'll end up being 6 parts. But we are making a documentary about toxic fandom and the rise of toxic fandom and what it's done and what it has to say about us culturally and where we're at. And we're going to look at everything. We're going to look at what happened with the Hugo Awards. We're going to look at Gamergate. We're going to look at Comicsgate. And we're going to use Axanar, the story of Axanar, as sort of the spine to help examine all these things. We're going to look at sports fans. We're going to look at all kinds of rabid fan communities and why there is such toxicity in those communities. And, I want to interview. There's a lot of people I want to interview, but it's another project that we've begun, and we are going to crowdfund it. And we're crowdfunding it because in addition to making the documentary, we have to fend off lawsuits. I mean, I still owe money for the last lawsuit that Alec Peters actually sued me in Georgia. I've never been to Georgia in terms of business. I've never worked in Georgia, but when he moved there, he sued me in Georgia, which meant I had to hire Georgia lawyers and pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to fight an unfounded lawsuit in a state that I've never done business in. But that's what Alec Peters does. He weaponizes the legal system because what he's hoping for is that you can't fight and he'll just get a judgment against you. He's doing that right now to Dean and Jared. Dean Newbury, who built his beloved bridge set by hand, he's suing Dean. And he's suing Paul Jenkins, who was on the show last Friday. I mean, Paul Jenkins, whose wife had brain surgery and Paul had to basically leverage his life. And Alec knew it and came after him all over a fan film. Because Alec Peters cannot produce a movie. If he could, he would have. If he'd invented Facebook, he would have invented Facebook. But he can't. And, anyway. And now I am not difficult to work with at all. I as a matter of fact, I think I'm kind of a joy to work with. But I'm very enthusiastic about the work I do. But I want it to be excellent. I don't like it when work isn't good, and I will speak my mind and say, "Why did you do that? What if somebody even above me, if there's a producer above me, I'll say, why did you do that? Why did you make something less good? Please explain your thinking to me." But yeah, it is impossible to make everyone like you. Do I have tips for handling online criticism from people who think they know better than you? Well, here's the thing. Here is my Robert Meyer Burnett way of handling online criticism, or any criticism for that matter. When you make something, like you make a movie like Free Enterprise, or you make Axonar, or you do this show, or whatever, when you put yourself out in the public in any way, shape, or form, you're going to get criticized. Now, here's what you have to do. You just have to listen. Because what you want to do is you want to fight back. You want to, obviously. But if people have cogent, if somebody has cogent criticism, like I've learned from people's criticism, like when you make a movie, your first impulse is like, but don't you get it? It's supposed to be this way. Well, if your audience is telling you something that they don't like, or just listen. Because if 3 or 4 people say the same thing to you, well, then you've got a problem. Then you should address it. So, online, what does it matter? What I don't like is, and what I do try and look, I'm guilty of sometimes getting in, not flame wars, but being snarky and responding to criticism like anybody else. I try not to. However, if people have misinformation, I will correct that information. There's a lot of misinformation about this Axonar business. So, I try and correct it. But the fact is, I busted my ass on Axonar. I did tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work that I deserve to be paid every penny for. And if you watch my 3 Axonar documentaries, those, of course, are, I guess, work that I did for free. Alec loaned me money. I mean, the Blu-ray that I produced, all the work that I did for Axonar. One of the things that we're going to talk about in this documentary is all of that. All of that. According to Alec Peters, he's never paid me a dime. Because, as I did not know, I only found out this past weekend when the CBS settlement came to light as part of Paul Jenkins' lawsuit. It actually said in the CBS settlement that Alec Peters could not pay me for work on Axonar. So no wonder he's been saying that he just loaned me money. I wasn't supposed to work on Axonar, according to the CBS settlement. But anyway. Now you ask why I'm a freelancer. Well, if you work in the entertainment business, you work on a project-by-project basis, unless you take a salaried position somewhere at like I could be a post-production supervisor for, I don't know, a game company or something, but I get paid on a project-by-project basis. So like right now, Tango Shalom is something that would pay me to do things. The Netflix series, I get paid on that, but we're doing 24 episodes of that show. I have worked on up through episode 17. So I have a fixed salary for that show that I get paid, but it's sporadic. You don't know how many you're going to do at a time because you have to wait for things to get animated and things like that. But I've been freelance most of my career. Now, I've had regular jobs. When I worked at Warner Brothers, I had a regular job. It was a regular job. Working on Star Trek, that was a 3-year job. When I worked on the Star Trek Experience in Vegas, that was an almost 2-year job. So, I've have salary positions before, but it just depends. If somebody gave me a salary position now, I'd take it. But do people at CBS get annoyed with you for your discussions on the franchise with these podcasts? And what are their reactions? I don't know what their reactions are. Look, I'll tell you this. The people at CBS, they don't really care what you're saying about Star Trek as long as you're talking about Star Trek. I mean, there has always been incredible vitriol surrounding the Star Trek franchise online. As I told you, Rick Berman said that there are two things that built the internet, pornography and Star Trek, because one of the very first things that people would talk about incessantly on the internet was Star Trek. So this is nothing new. What they're doing is building, I mean, we should be paid for the amount I talk about Star Trek. CBS should have me on the payroll, because when you're talking about Star Trek, you're talking about Star Trek. They're getting free advertising from you. And I mean, look, I really do not like modern Star Trek. I think it is creatively bankrupt. I think it's being run by people that mean well, but Michelle Paradise, I'll tell you one thing, she's never read this book. I don't think she ever would, but I think that they've got all the money in the world to do whatever they want, and we get the most mediocre science fiction of it's painful how mediocre modern Star Trek is to me. And it all comes down to the writing. I mean, these ideas like the burn, this just stupid ideas. All dilithium exploded. Really? Why? Why did it explode? Well, is that a mystery? Okay, let's run that down. So dilithium, where is this dilithium? Like if it all exploded all at one time, did some force from outside the galaxy snap their fingers, or was it a gradual thing? I don't think they know. First of all, the idea in itself is stupid, because here they're saying there's no more Federation, yet what about the Federation homeworlds? Like I said, Earth, Alpha Centauri, Teller, Andor, where are all these planets? They didn't go anywhere. And apparently, the Federation's blown up. I mean, literally, they had this catastrophe that blew up the Federation. It's just so dumb. It's so dumb. One of these books, this book, in its first, chapter, has better ideas in it than anything that they've put out from Star Trek in the last 11 years. I mean, you'd think if they just read this one book, they would have enough ideas to make great Star Trek. But they don't. Anyway, I've been going on this for a long time. So I will get to another letter. I'm sure everybody's bored to tears at this point. But if anybody wants to ask me any specific questions about Axanar or what's going on, I'm happy to answer those questions. I'm sure that Alec Peters will sue me yet again, because, he's certainly done a lot of lawsuits. The guy can't make a movie, so I guess suing his former collaborators that have done all the work that he proudly holds up as the things that he made, but he sues everybody that made them. It's unbelievable. It's unconscionable, really. He's weaponized the legal system to come after people, to cause them, specifically to cause people hardship. People with families. And it's amazing. Anyway, Jesse Means the third is here. Jesse Means says, I have been a huge fan of yours since the days of both you and John Schnepp's Collider days. I contracted COVID earlier this year, which inspired my brother to make Wear Your Mask with Mr. Means. Wow. I reside in Texas, and he's in New York City. And the love and the movie he created has brought us closer together in spite of how far apart we are. Thank you for allowing both he and other Imagination Connoisseurs share what happens to them. Wow. Well, Jesse Means the third, what a delightful letter. If there's any reason to think of, if I ever doubted the choice to have a film festival, you just alleviated that. Wow, what a great letter. So what Jesse's writing about is, obviously there's a video. One of the videos that was sent in for the film festival came from Mr. Means for his brother. I did not know that until just now. The Wear Your Mask. And I mean, it looks like it's a video done for elementary school kids. It's a catchy jingle. It's pretty fun to look at. I did not know that. What a great thing to know. You know what? I'm going to put this letter aside, and I'm going to I'm going to put this up on your entry, if I may, so it can be up there. Now, don't let the judges will not be swayed by this. Just because you wrote in Jesse Means the Third doesn't mean that you're going to curry any favor with the judges. You have to be judged like everybody else. But what a delightful letter. So thank you for this. How cool is that? It's very cool. So thank you for writing in. I very much appreciate that. My God, there are so many letters. So many letters. Bad, I have to save that. I've got a million letters to read. Omar94 with the letter. Hi, Rob. I don't know if you and others will agree with this, but I consider pacing to play a role in whether a person enjoys a movie. I'm not saying it always plays a role, but it does help. There are some movies where I like them, but I can still say it dragged, and it would have been better if it was better paced. For example, I like Hook, but I think it dragged a lot in the middle. If the middle were better paced and was a lot smoother, I might have liked the movie more than I already do. Other times, I can find a movie either okay or not that great because it dragged a lot. I found The Irishman to be just okay, as I felt I might have liked it more if it was better paced. I did not like Ron Howard's Willow due to its length and pacing, since I found it to be very slow. If the Willow movie was edited to where it had a faster pace, I might have thought it was better. As I said, I don't know if you and others will agree, but that's just me when I watch a movie. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, as an editor myself, pacing is a big deal. Obviously, it's a very important thing to deal with. But sometimes it depends. Like, you might have a subject matter that's not as interesting to you. Like, I love The English Patient, and I keep hearing from people that don't like the movie. They think it's so boring, and I don't find it boring at all. So I think, there are movies I feel that pacing is definitely an issue, and the ebb and flow of getting scenes correct is really hard. That's one of the primary jobs of an editor, is to make sure that a film is well paced. And it's a tough thing, but it's also people's tastes. What you might think is slow paced, somebody else might think is just right. And it really depends. I think the pacing of a movie, the overall pacing of a film, is definitely part of the conception of the director and the editor when they're working together. It's always said that a movie is rewritten or written 3 times. Once on the page, once when you shoot it, and the third time when you're editing the movie. You're rewriting. And pacing is a big issue. It's a big part of that. And, it's definitely a skill. It's definitely an art form. I mean, I'll tell you this. There is a scene in Tango Shalom that I think drags. I'm not going to say what scene it is, but it's a scene where we have to have it. Like, if I had my druthers, I'm like, let's cut this scene out completely. But you need it because there's plot elements that are set up, and we cut it. It was cut in half from what it originally was. So, yeah. Cut in half. And I know that it a lot of people, when they watch it, it's toward the beginning of the movie too. So sometimes you can't do anything about that, but you try and make it as good as you can. But pacing is a big deal, man. Big deal. Marcus Bisma wrote in. Marcus Bisma. Hello, Rob. I am from Bali, Indonesia, and this is my first ever letter to Robservations. In regards to the upcoming Gal Gadot's Cleopatra project, I will not comment about Cleopatra's race, since it's well known that she was Macedonian Greek. I find this project is very risky in financial terms, and it's really a bold decision by any studio to greenlight the project. The recent ancient epic movies like Ben-Hur's remake, Ridley Scott's Exodus, Gods of Egypt, they turn out to be box office disasters. And yes, they're terrible movies, but as we know, quality doesn't equal money. The last successful ancient epic I can think of was Gladiator, which dated way back to 2000, and probably Brad Pitt's Troy in 2004. Is there an audience left for ancient epic movies? I'm not sure, because the new generation did not grow up watching and appreciating Ben-Hur, The Ten Commandments, or Cleopatra on television like me. The 3-hour epic movies are such a rarity nowadays that it gives an indication on how modern audiences don't feel the epicness. As an avid fan of ancient epic movies, I applaud Gadot and Patty Jenkins' decision to give it a try. Hopefully it can give me an epic feel, since Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven extended cut, which I really loved. Thank you and best regards, Marcus. Marcus, I love the extended cut of Kingdom of Heaven. I think it's great. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you didn't grow up watching movies like Ben-Hur or The Robe or King of Kings, and if you didn't watch those great epics, the Sword and Sandal epics or biblical epics, I think you just don't get it. I mean, nowadays, those epic movies have been replaced by epic fantasies like Lord of the Rings. And, I think it's... I just think that we live in a different time. Gladiator works because even though it takes place in ancient Rome, you still have the hero's journey, so to speak, and it feels like, despite the period setting, the story feels relatively modern. A man gets fucked over, and he wants revenge. So I'm like, okay, you can, and also, I'll tell you something else. I think when I was growing up, America was more, you think about when those movies were made, and America was more of a, let's call it a Christian nation than it is. I mean, those biblical epics, even War of the Worlds, or When Worlds Collide, begins with a biblical passage, the religious iconography. And I think that I think we as our culture, world culture, has sort of moved away from that. I mean, I don't know if I don't know enough about Indian cinema. Do they make are there epic Bollywood movies about scripture or the Hindu religious practices from back in the day? I mean, I don't know. But I think that's probably has something to do with it. Our culture has sort of taken the focus off of religious themed material. And a lot of our epic movies were based on that. Like, look, I love Ben-Hur. I'll watch Ben-Hur. I love it. I mean, I like The Robe. I'll watch these CinemaScope biblical epics because they're really interesting. They're great. They're great stories. I mean, biblical stories are great. Heck, you know what? If I was a successful director, I'd go back. I'd love to make a Job movie. Like, maybe even do a modern take on Job. I think that'd be great. I'd love to do that. But yeah, people just they don't dig it anymore, man. They don't dig the biblical movies. John Clilburn. You know what? Maybe it's Clyburn, not Clill. It's Clyburn. John Clyburn. Sorry about John that I did that. John Clyburn. The problem with New Trek is very simple, says John. The Star Trek I grew up with was, at its core, storytelling capable of inspiring its viewers or readers to look within and without, often challenging convention, and, when at its best, made us think and feel. In essence, Star Trek ironically traveled to distant corners of the galaxy only to intimately examine what it means to be human. Storylines transcended a single political agenda, and fans could find powerful meaning regardless of their circumstances or background, as evidenced by packed conventions filled with every imaginable kind of soul on this good earth. You'll never hear the simple, evocative melody of Picard's flute whistling across time and space, or feel the fathomless depth of a son's devotion to his father as Jake Sisko's elderly, trembling hands clasp those of a dad he could never let go. Benny Russell's agonizing exclamation while crumpled on the floor carried far more real political meaning than all the dozens of episodes of New Trek put together. New Trek checks all of the proper political boxes. It completely ignores both character and story while making an absolute mockery of everything that precedes it. It exists for the sole purpose of delivering a nearly singular political message with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. It has no heart. It lacks a soul. It is all agenda. While Star Trek unites, New Trek divides. Where Star Trek dreams, New Trek bemoans. In short, New Trek, with its empty characters and hollow stories, will quickly be forgotten, while its noble namesake stands the test of time. No, I did not write that letter and just put my name, John Clyburn, on it. This is actually from John Clyburn. He even has an email address. I salute you, sir. You and I definitely park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. Yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised that I watch. There's all this stuff going on I another thing that I really didn't like about Discovery season 3's opener is they've now resolved themselves to go 1,000 years in the future, or 960, whatever it is. So if you know you are doing that, I would think that there's a lot you would think to yourself, like, nothing, when I get into the future, nothing is going to be like I remember it. It's going to be, so I need to be ready for anything and everything and have a complete open mind, because that's what a Starfleet officer would do. Now, you've taken on this course of action, and I don't think that Michael Burnham, since the episode was all about Michael Burnham, when she got there, she certainly didn't act like she had prepared herself to go 1,000 years into the future. I did like I liked the end of the episode. That felt very Star Trekian, but how could it not? It was an amalgamation of things from other places. But, yep, I agree with you. I think you are absolutely correct about this. Ladies and gentlemen, Willow Yang has written a letter. Well, you know what? Before I read any more letters, let me jump over and see what anybody else is saying, because I haven't done it. I haven't gone over to what you guys are saying, and I've been on for a long time. So let's see what you guys are saying. And I will hold off on that Willow Yang letter. Wait till you hear what Willow Yang has written about. Amazing. So Willow says, I'm glad to hear the progress that's finally been made on the Furiosa prequel. Do you know what the dispute between George Miller and Warner Brothers over Fury Road was all about? Boy, I've been talking so long that I forgot that I found out for you, Willow. I did a little bit of research. Here it is. Here is the research. What happened between George Miller, Warner Brothers, and Fury Road? This from Zach Sharf from 2 years ago, April 16th, 2018. Mad Max lawsuit details. George Miller's production company accuses Warner Brothers of reprehensible behavior. The future of George Miller's Mad Max franchise is in jeopardy as a court battle between the director's production company, Kennedy Miller Mitchell, and Warner Brothers heats up in Australia's Supreme Court of New South Wales. Miller's company is suing the studio for unpaid earnings on Mad Max Fury Road. The director spoke briefly about the lawsuit last November, but the Sydney Morning Herald has obtained new court documents that detail the battle between the two companies. The lawsuit accuses Warner Brothers of acting in a high-handed, insulting, or reprehensible manner and destroying its relationship with Kennedy Miller Mitchell by refusing to pay the production company a bonus fee for delivering the movie under budget. Kennedy Miller Mitchell claims it is eligible for a $9 million payment after it delivered Fury Road under the agreed budget of $157 million. The production company says Fury Road's final budget was $154.6 million, although Warner Brothers claims the film went way over budget and cost $185.1 million. In a cross-lawsuit filed by Warner Brothers, the studio accuses Kennedy Miller Mitchell of breaking contract over the film's intended runtime and rating. Warner Brothers says Miller's production company signed a contract to deliver a 100-minute movie with a PG-13 rating. Fury Road ended up running 120 minutes and earned an R rating from the MPAA. I think that's Warner Brothers. That's pretty lame, Warner Brothers, because you allowed that to happen. You okayed it. The lawsuit also mentions conflict between Kennedy Miller Mitchell and Warner Brothers over which scenes would be shot for the movie. The production company alleges Warner Brothers insisted Miller not shoot some of the scenes he'd scripted, including those set in Immortan Joe's Citadel. Kennedy Miller Mitchell accuses the studio of making a series of decisions that caused substantial changes and delays to the production, including cutting scenes and forcing reshoots after seeing Miller's rough cut. Fury Road's reshoots are another point of contention between the studio and the production company. Kennedy Miller Mitchell says Warner Brothers approved a $31 million plan to reshoot scenes for the movies and that the cost was to be excluded from the net cost of the film. However, Warner Brothers says the company agreed to fund some of the additional filming and that it made changes without the studio's approval that delayed production and raised the budget. Another source of debate between the companies is the involvement of Brett Ratner's Rat Pack Dune Entertainment. Kennedy Miller Mitchell claims Warner Brothers arranged for Rat Pack Dune to co-finance the movie despite being contractually required to offer the company the first opportunity to do so if it was required. Mad Max Fury Road was released May 15th, 2015 to universal acclaim. The film ended up grossing $378 million worldwide and earned 10 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director for Miller. The filmmaker has script plans already set for 2 additional sequels, one of which is focused on Charlize Theron's Furiosa. There you go. So, That was what happened. Now you might ask, these things, when it's over money, it can get acrimonious and all that, but it's par for the course. Obviously, Warner Brothers has been in the George Miller business for a very, very long time. His company made Happy Feet for them. He's made Warner Brothers a lot of money over the years. So I'm sure they were able to put their differences aside and make that happen. So they are making the Furiosa movie with Anya Taylor-Joy, and I can't wait. Sub McShave says, finally, next Sunday is the last time the countries in the EU changes back from daylight saving time to standard time. No more changing of clocks for no other reason than to aggravate me. Is the U.S. going to continue this farce that we've outgrown? You know what? I don't know. Frankly, I love it when, daylight savings time is great for the summer. I don't know. Are you going to daylight savings time forever? Or are we going back to standard time forever? I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah. That's a good question, Stubble. I don't know what's going on with that. Stubble McShave goes on and says, I suspect that the motive for moving the timeline of Star Trek Discovery 1,000 years into the future was to be able to do a Star Wars series in the Star Trek IP. They can do whatever they want because they don't have to adhere to established Federation lore anymore. Yeah, but again, it's the ultimate example of trying to turn Star Trek into something that is other than Star Trek. And I just find it so strange. Jeff Yerke 7? Jeff Yerke 7 sends in a tip and says, Hi, Rob. I'm here to report sad news, at least for me. I have officially given up on Kurtzman Trek. Fool me once, shame on you. You get the idea. I'm exhausted from trying to watch 3 years of new Star Trek. Live long and prosper. The Yerk Man. P.S. Mrs. Y says, hey. Well, you tell Mrs. Y, hey, right back for me. I'm sorry that you know what you got to do? Go back and watch, like in our household, Elizabeth has gone through the original series and Next Generation. She just started Deep Space Nine. And it's been fun watching them with her. Stubble McShave says, this short story business is more up my alley than short movies. I have the basic premise of a horror short story in my head. Time for brainstorming. Okay, but don't just think it up. Put pen to paper and start writing. You got to start writing. If you're the Imagination Connoisseurs, what does that mean? I don't know. I don't know what that means, and that's what I hope you all are going to tell me through your work. Paul in Long Beach is here. Paul in Long Beach says, the week of October 9th, 1976, the number one song in America was the disco version of Beethoven's Fifth. If you're going to defend that musical abomination as much as you love the horror show that is Disco Star Wars, then I'll start calling for psychotherapy. Come on, man. Look. If you think about it, doing electronic or disco versions of classical pieces of music, switched on Bach, Walter Carlos, or was that Wendy Carlos? Walter before he became Wendy. Let's find out, shall we? I don't remember. Switched on Bach. Yep, Walter Carlos. He did it. So, October 1968. Wow. And wasn't a Fifth of Beethoven on the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack? So I'm not going to defend it, but I think, or what about what Walter Carlos's music, Wendy Carlos, what she did for A Clockwork Orange with the Ode to Joy, Beethoven's Ninth, all that. Amazing. I liked it. Now, I'm not going to defend Beethoven's Fifth, the disco version of Beethoven's Fifth, but come on. Think about it. People were getting their groove on dance floors to Beethoven. That's got to be worth something, right? Isn't that cool? I think that's pretty cool. Come on, Paul. You were dancing to that. I had my Saturday Night Fever record. I loved it. I was a little kid, 10 years old. I was boogieing down to Beethoven's Fifth, I'm sure. Nick Parrish is here. Nick Parrish says, what's up, Rob? So Disney must be tapping my super chats or watching your show because on Friday they finally said all right, we can't hide this any longer. The movie comes out in a week, and decided to put out the trailer for The Empty Man. I have to tell you, that actually kind of looked good to me. For those of you who don't know, The Empty Man, I guess The Empty Man's like the Slender Man, but instead of being slender, he's just empty inside. I don't know, but it kind of looked good. I mean, I'm sure it's probably not good. And also, apparently, Disney Plus is going to have some kind of now a password protected. We've been speculating, like on the John Campea show, that they're going to put all their R-rated stuff and somewhere else, like on Hulu. But the problem is, as it was pointed out to me, I think Bill Hunt was talking to me about this. Hulu is not the rest of the world, and Disney Plus is all over the world. So what they're going to start doing is you're going to have like a parental password to get into another section of Disney Plus to see all their R-rated fare, so they can put all the Fox films, I guess Alien and The French Connection or whatever, Patton, although Patton's PG, Patton's probably already on Disney Plus. But that's going to be cool. So yes, I believe that The Empty Man is a Fox film that they're finally releasing. Are you excited? Nick Parrish goes on to say, now I must say, after finally seeing the trailer, I would be excited, Rob, if it didn't look like so many other supernatural horror movies we've seen before. Just from the trailer, it seems like the movie is a hybrid of The Ring and Candyman. I know. I mean, it's so strange. Like these supernatural ghosts. It's like the new slasher genre. You know, I don't know when it actually started. Was it with Paranormal Activity? Would you go back to Paranormal Activity 1, the modern era? So we've been in this at least a decade of. We went from J horror, you know, into this supernatural. It's very interesting. I mean, somebody needs to write some monograph about this, about how the influence of J horror sort of informed American horror, and now we've been living in 10 years of all of the same tropes. I mean, some of this, James Wan can pull that shit off. He's the master of the jump scare, but all this other stuff, I mean, I don't know. Some of it's okay. I still, you know what? We talked about it on Whining About Movies. I still maintain that my favorite movie of all of these supernatural movies is The Autopsy of Jane Doe. If you haven't seen The Autopsy of Jane Doe, it's 85 minutes of sheer delight. If you like scary movies, it's one of my favorites. Now, in terms of like visceral horror, it just gets in and gets out. It gets the job done. I can't say enough good things about The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Willow Yang. And this is hilarious. She's writing about one of my least favorite episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. God love Willow Yang. God love her. She is a treat, and she is one of the foundational cornerstones of this channel. Greetings, Rob. I am writing my thoughts on what I feel is a somewhat underrated episode of Deep Space Nine, Meridian. You mean Brigadoon? I personally did not find Meridian to be nearly as terrible as some other viewers have. God love you, Willow. Now, I did certainly have issues with the episode, the first and foremost being that I did not care for the romance between Jadzia and Dural. I found it to be very bland and boring. Furthermore, I didn't like that Jadzia would apparently leave behind her, for the sake of simplicity, I'm using female pronouns to refer to Jadzia, her entire life and all of her friends, to be with a guy she's known for less than 2 weeks. Maybe the sex was that good. Everyone is always on their best behavior in the beginning of a new courtship, and it isn't until later on that they start showing their true colors. Jadzia, of all people, ought to know that, seeing that she possesses the knowledge and experiences of multiple lifetimes. Dural might be a serial killer for all she knows. You generally wouldn't marry someone with whom you've only known for 2 weeks. And unlike marriage, where you do have the option of getting a divorce if things go south and not in a good way, Jadzia is not going to be able to back out once the planet goes into another dimension. She's going to have to put up with Dural for the next 60 years. It's not really the smartest decision, in my opinion. Then there's the problem that Meridians are facing with their phase-shifting planet, which formed the central conflict with the main storyline. I'm not an astrophysicist, so I just went along with all the technobabble that they gave trying to explain the science of a planet that's transitioning between 2 different dimensions. Of course, the simplest and most obvious solution to me would be just to evacuate the people off the planet before it disappears again. It wasn't as if there were millions of inhabitants left on Meridian. which would pose a refugee crisis. The few dozen survivors could have easily taken up residence on the space station until a more suitable home had been found. They could have made up a reason why that couldn't be done, either because the people had some kind of connection to the planet and will die if they weren't on it when it phase shifts, or because they were simply too stubborn and would rather risk extinction than abandon their way of life. Either way, it would have been just a simple explanation that could have been addressed in just a few lines of dialogue. Not bringing it up at all, however, left a bit of a logic problem for me. In spite of my issues with Meridian, the episode isn't without its charms. While I disliked the Jadzia and Doral relationship, I did really like the bond between Dax and Sisko. The scene towards the end where Sisko started choking up as he said what he thought would be his goodbyes to his old friend was very sweet and poignant. I also did quite enjoy the secondary plot involving Kira, Quark, and Tehran. I found it to be quite an entertaining and welcome break from the boring romance of the main storyline. And while it's certainly not meant to be anything profound and thought-provoking, the plot does harken back to Barclay and Hollow Pursuits and the whole ethics of creating images of real live people. How has copyright law evolved in the 24th century? Do you need to get permission from an individual to make a simulation of them? Also, was Quark too lazy to bother checking the simulation of Kira to make sure that he'd gotten her right before inviting Tehran to the holosuite? All in all, I didn't think that Meridian was by any means a great episode. However, I didn't think it comes anywhere near close to the spectacular awfulness of some of the early TNG episodes like Code of Honor or Shades of Grey, the latter of which might be one of the worst episodes of any television show I've ever seen. I didn't think that it was even as bad as Fascination just a few episodes later, but I'm biased since I find the character of Laxwana Troi to be insufferable. I do want to take a moment, however, to discuss the whole idea of existing as an incorporeal consciousness for 60 years. Unlike Bashir, who seems to think that such a lifestyle has its appeals, I personally think it sounds absolutely horrific. I just cannot imagine having to spend more than half a century being conscious, but being unable to eat or drink or watch a movie or read smut or enjoy any other form of sensual pleasure. My kind of girl, Willow. You are my kind of girl. If you've watched the television series Angel, you might remember the episode Hellbound in season 5, where the gang defeated and punished the ghost of a serial killer by imprisoning him in a device where he can't move, but will remain conscious for presumably all of eternity, with Angel saying the final line to him, "Welcome to hell." That is what I would imagine being in an incorporeal state would be like. It's torture. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just too addicted to the pleasures of the flesh. I'd be curious to know what other people feel about the prospects of such a form of existence. Live long and prosper, Willow. Man, I love how you can turn an episode about a letter about Star Trek Deep Space Nine into the sensual pleasures of the flesh. That's why you're always welcome around these parts, dear Willow, whenever you want. This is another Omar 94 letter. Rob, just curious. I wanted to know what you think of when you hear the words movie magic. For me, what a great question. For me, it varies. Actually, I think Mike put this up because I've seen people answering this question. For me, it varies. On one hand, I think of movie magic as visual effects, like all the animation in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the T-1000 shapeshifting in Terminator 2, or a shot of a dinosaur from Jurassic Park. On the other, I think of movie magic as a moment or a scene that I feel was made as if the stars were in alignment. In E.T., when the bicycle rides off the cliff and flies through the sky, eventually flying across the moon, all while John Williams' score is heard, I refer to that whole sequence as movie magic since I get goosebumps the second I hear Williams' music, and it puts a huge smile on my face. Another example of a scene I refer to as movie magic is the end of A New Hope, with the space battle ending with the Death Star explosion. That whole sequence with John Williams' music and great lines like, "You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home. Great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million." And ends with, "Remember, the Force will be with you, always." Also gives me goosebumps and puts a huge smile on my face. That's what I think of when I hear movie magic, whether it's visual effects or an incredible moment or a scene. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, I think all of those things are correct. I guess, since you asked what movie magic is, I think the magic of movies in general, those are great examples of scenes, but I find it amazing that when I am sitting in a movie theater, watching light play on a screen, seeing images that are all fake, that have all been created, They're put together in such a way that they touch, for lack of a better term, they touch my soul. That a movie can actually, a movie on a screen can actually elicit an emotional response in me at all. That I am so engaged on so many levels, the sensory levels, but not just my intellect is engaged. Whatever the soul is, it is all in when you're watching a good movie, and that you can actually be moved to tears or feel great despair or great pain or great joy, that you have an emotional connection to what is being shown to you, that somebody has conjured up. Because I do believe that movies are somewhat, there's a little bit of alchemy. There's a little bit of Rumpelstiltskin involved in turning straw into gold. How that works is forever fascinating to me. And I think that one of the reasons that I became so addicted to movies as a kid was because that was how I was emotionally engaged. My emotions, my soul, if you will, was engaged by movies. I was moved and touched by them. And it was like, in a way, you're mainlining the human experience. Movies, I've never done heroin, so I couldn't tell you, but if you're taking a certain drug, I guess a drug of choice, I can tell you about cocaine and ecstasy if you want. But I like ecstasy. Great ecstasy is great. But what's amazing about that is you're actually having a physiological response. Great ecstasy, great MDMA literally causes a serotonin dump. So as serotonin gets, parceled out, you feel something. But when you take good E and you have this full-on serotonin dump, it's amazing. And by the way, ecstasy was only declared illegal in, 86? And they've been doing a lot of research about it, helping people with PTSD. It'll eventually be legal again because it's an amazing drug. If I do say so myself, I haven't done it in a long time because it's really hard to get really good E or ecstasy or just good MDMA. It's all cut with speed now. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. But I think that's what movie magic is. Movie magic is that ability to engage the heart and the mind and the senses. And when it works, like when you have those scenes, na 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 na, whatever. I mean, that the ET theme is all of it. The imagery works together, and the lead up to that piece of music, dun 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 na 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 na, all that's so awesome. The riding through when they get to the woods and all that. It's all of it. It's the idea that these kids have spirited away E.T. They're rescuing him, and I mean, it's all of it. It's the scenario, it's the location, it's the Alan Davio's cinematography, it's the actors that Spielberg cast in the movie, and it's his shot choices. I mean, that guy, Steven Spielberg, he inherently understands how to put images together to create, I think, the greatest emotional impact. When he was working at the peak of his powers, man, there was nobody that could get in there, that could get into your heart faster than he could. And through his shot choices, through the music, through the cinematography, all of it. I mean, that guy, unbelievable. He's an unbelievable talent. And that to me, that's what movie magic is all about. Jamie Wright writes in and says, "Hi, Rob. I've been watching your show for a little while now, and I've decided to write in for the first time. Thanks to your love of Star Trek, I've decided to watch Star Trek. I'm about halfway through season 1 of the original series, and I am loving it so far. My question to you is, I'm a 16-year-old from England." Yes, the new generation. We've turned you into one of us. My question for you is, I'm a 16-year-old from England, and I've loved films all my life, with each film when I was younger becoming my new favorite film. I really want to be in the film industry, and I was wondering if you have any tips for an aspiring filmmaker. I do. And here is the tip, Jamie. I think at least a lot of my friends that I know that got into the film business, they started making films when they were younger. I mean, that it's as simple as that. If you want to be a filmmaker, just like if you want to be a writer or whatever it is you want to be, you don't have to wait for somebody to tell you what to do. The technology exists now. It has never been easier to make a movie. I mean, it still requires, it's still hard. You still have to be talented. But you know what? There's a couple of books. There's a book called Shot by Shot. I think it's called Shot by Shot. You know, just do a little bit of reading and study your favorite movies and go out and start trying to make a film and learn what coverage is. You know, and I would start, I always tell people, I always use this as an example when I talk about like directing. Find a scene. You know what? Find maybe in a play or something, or like Glenn Ross, or a play that you haven't necessarily seen the movie because you don't want to copy it, but sit down and figure out, like, find a piece of material and shoot a conversation at a table between, let's say, 4 people. Just do that. You'll learn more about filmmaking and before you do it though, you've got to read up on how to shoot certain shots, and you should read up on, there's a book that I think everybody should read if you are interested in filmmaking. You've got to read Walter Murch's book, In the Blink of an Eye. It's a short book, but it's all about film editing. And read about film editing and read about shot choices, and then go film a conversation with people around a table and see how that turns out and report back. But my real advice is, if you want to be a filmmaker, start making movies. And you might be like, well, where do I begin? Well, you begin like everyone. Come up with an idea and start small. You know, start small and do that exercise where you shoot a conversation. I mean, you don't even necessarily have to. I mean, it's hard when you get family members. Like, you're 16. Get your mom and dad, if they will indulge you, to have a conversation and shoot your mom and dad, like at the dinner table. Like, sit them down. I mean, they're going to have to do it as you read about shots. They're going to have the same conversation like 4 or 5 times, and it'll be improv, which will make it even harder for you to edit. But try an exercise like that. Better yet, what would be really, really interesting is if you have a smartphone or 2 smartphones, if your mom or dad has a smartphone and you have a smartphone, find a way to get a little tripod, right? And shoot your mom and your dad. It's simple exercise. Let's keep it simple. And so you set up the proper, proper framing. You know, keep one on one side of the frame and the other on the other side of the frame, so it's you'll find out. And just shoot your mom and your dad, and you've got the smartphones running, shooting. Try and get the framing kind of the same, and then edit the conversation together. And see, you'll learn about pacing. You know, you'll learn about editorial, like where are you going to cut back, and start there. You know, you can teach yourself filmmaking, and there's so many ways to do it. But the only way you're going to learn how to become a filmmaker is to make films. That's it. That's my advice. My advice to you. And you know what? Report back. Send me your film. I'll look at your film. You don't have to pay for an entry fee into the film festival or anything like that, but make a film. So yeah, this one comes from Ian Samuels. All right. Rob and fellow Robservationists. And so, after a long wait for some, season 3 of Star Trek Discovery has dropped. Well, at least the first episode has. One thing that set Netflix aside from other streaming services was that you could get a whole season of TV dropped at once. The best place for binge watchers to gather. But at least with Discovery, that has now changed. And so now that we have avoided the inevitable first episode of Season 3 of Discovery, taking Star Trek in a brand new direction never explored before. My opinion? Interesting. There's some interesting sci-fi concepts in what seemingly has the potential of an interesting sci-fi series. Does it erase the errors of Season 1 and 2 with their blatantly racist portrayal of African Klingons or Asian Vulcans? No, of course not. The horrors of terrible writing and terrible ideas and ripped-off ideas can never be erased. But now with the new direction and even more ideas borrowed from other franchises, we get something vaguely interesting. The biggest problem is that despite having perhaps the potential of an interesting sci-fi series, it does not deserve the Star Trek name and does not belong in the Star Trek universe. Star Trek established itself as a unique sci-fi series, establishing its own universe and rules. It didn't need to borrow from others. I feel that this is the biggest problem with modern Trek. It borrows too much when it already has its own thing, and it doesn't need to borrow. Will I watch more of Season 3 of Discovery? Well, probably. But it's not Star Trek. Ian. Ian, once again, you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. So, yeah. This letter comes from Lubna Khan. Lubna Khan says, hello. When saying that the visual medium scares me more easily than the written word, I'm not sure that it is the visuals, but rather more so the sound. The sound effects and the music that really get me. Of course, I also hate anything jumping out on me. It doesn't have to actually be anything scary even. Anybody sneaking around and about to jump out and I can barely even look. Why, it doesn't even matter if I know what it is. There's this Sherlock Holmes story that I shan't mention the name of as I'm about to spoil it somewhat. There was a TV series adaptation in the 80s, pre-Jimmy Brett. Holmes and Watson are waiting in a dark room for something, and I knew, of course, perfectly well what it was, and yet this barely made a difference. Note, I was then rather disappointed in the following scene, where the snake, instead of being coiled around the fellow's head as in the story, was merely hanging limply around his neck. Anyway, going even further back into the days of my ever more distant youth, I was once scared out of my wits by The Muppet Show. No, really. There was this gorilla that suddenly, completely unexpectedly jumped into the frame. Well, I'm fairly sure it was a gorilla. However, I'm visually impaired, and it's not like I stayed to take a closer look. I rushed out of the living room, down the hall, and into the bathroom where I locked myself in. True story. You may laugh if you like. I do. Hell, man, I used to be scared of James Earl Jones counting to 10. So I'm not going to begrudge you your gorilla. Funnily enough, when reading, also in my youthful days, though not quite as youthful, what scared me more were not so much supernatural stories, but rather murder mysteries. I had to sternly take myself to task. Look, nobody is going to come along and murder you just because you're alone at home in the middle of the afternoon reading Agatha Christie, 4:50 to Paddington, or whatever it may have been. Another time, I was not alone at home, but I was in the wee hours, and I was reading in the kitchen, and my parents and brothers were fast asleep. One Sherlock Holmes story filled me with this feeling of dread. I should probably not mention the name of the story either for similar reasons as above. The story involved the Ku Klux Klan, and the person who sought Holmes's help was murdered on his way home. It was as if this was some nameless evil that even Sherlock Holmes could not overcome. Otherwise, I always felt safe in his hands. I knew he'd take care of everything. He was one of my literary heroes, and still is, really. But not this. Anyway, this has gone on long enough already. In my next missive, I mean to talk a little bit about M.R. James, with a detour to Henry James, because why not? If you have not already discovered that I'm prone to more or less unmotivated digressions, you will. Lubna. P.S. This time my offering is at least somewhat seasonal. Voloskar's Trankov's Dracula program. I'm going to put this in the live chat. Whatever this is, you will have to check it out. And I'm going to put it there. And here we go. Let's see. There's that for you. If anyone had ever told me that I'd love, let alone it being one of my favorites, a Dracula program, I would not have believed them. It is brilliant. By the by, I quite agree with your views on Coppola's Dracula. Pretty pictures, but they don't really hang together. I didn't particularly care what became of the characters, probably why it didn't scare me that much either. And I, as you know, am the wimpiest of wimps. Honestly, the Muppet Show gorillas scared me more. The dresses were pretty, even though if memory serves, they were about a decade or so out of fashion. I really will stop babbling now. I just do so enjoy talking with you. Well, Lubna Khan, thank you for that. I just love your name, Lubna Khan. I love seeing it. Whenever you write in, please write in more. You're always welcome here. That's a little Friday the 13th for you. Let's see. This is a very long letter, and I'm going to save this letter, but this is an absolutely fantastic letter, which I will get to at some other time, probably tomorrow. You know what? I think that time has come. Let me look. Let me see what we've got here. We got people have sent in. Let me get back to. There's been a few tips and super chats that have come in. Let me get to those. S Beam sends in a 2. I'm going to go back and watch the original Star Trek and go from there. This way I can figure out for myself what all the hubbub is about for new Trek. I grew up with The Next Generation but fell off after their movies. I had hopes for Picard but was not impressed. No, Star Trek Picard is one of the greatest bastardizations of a character I've ever seen. S-Beam goes on to say, so I'm hoping to get a better understanding of all points of Trek. I'm only really familiar with the original cast from the movies. So do I just watch the shows or do I put the movies in between? No. The movies all come after the show. You have to start watching. Okay, here's I know I belabor this point a lot. You have to start with the original series, and you start with Where No Man Has Gone Before, which was the title of the second pilot. Don't watch The Cage. Don't watch The Cage. That was a rejected pilot. And wait until... You got to wait to see how The Cage is presented in the first season of the original series. So, your proper order would be Where No Man Has Gone Before, The Man Trap, Charlie X, in that order. And you will catch up with The Cage in the Menagerie 1 and 2. That's how you start. And report back. Mark C. is here. Hello, Mark. If Willow would like to watch an amazing Deep Space Nine episode, might I suggest The Begotten? Odo's nursing a sick baby, Changeling, and the episode's conclusion, it's the only time Star Trek made me cry. Wow. Really? Mark C. says, I don't recommend anyone try drugs. That said, I don't know why. At least once a month, they don't dump ecstasy into the water supply. Yeah, well, you know what? Let me just say, ecstasy only really can work once a month. I mean, you could do it every other week, but... And only 2 pills tops, and they've got to be great. I'm just saying. Because ecstasy is not... It's not like cocaine where you take more... You keep that stimulation up. No. Ecstasy does one thing. It dumps serotonin into your system. You have a finite amount of it. Once the serotonin's gone, if you have good ecstasy, maybe a pill and a half will do it all. And don't drink, because that ruins it. Don't do anything. Don't smoke marijuana. You gotta plan it. And if you want to do it the best, get your significant other to do it with you. Trust me. Just saying. Mark C. goes on to say, assuming it's not just a hit piece and you would like a fan's perspective on Comicsgate or the fandom menace, I would be willing to help. But as far as Comicsgate is concerned, if someone doesn't talk to Ethan Van Sciver, I question your endeavor's merit. Oh, I'm going to. I have a list of everybody that I want to talk to. I want to talk to everybody. I mean, I want to talk to Ethan Van Sciver. I want to talk to Vox Day about the sad and rabid puppies. I mean, yeah, I want to talk to everybody. If you're going to do this kind of a documentary, you have to present all sides. Because I think, one of the things about toxic fandom, I think, and you, Mark C., you are the official toxic fan of this channel, so maybe I have to bring you on board as a paid consultant. I think what's really interesting is what we want, ultimately, all of us, is we want whatever our favorite things are, we want them to be great. We want them to be great. And the problem is, what is happening to these franchises, at least in my mind, is they are succumbing to, like somebody pointed out earlier, Star Trek was trying to transcend politics of the day. I mean, look, it's definitely Kennedy's Camelot America. That's what Star Trek obviously was espousing American values, frontier, what we were going to do with how we were going to shape America into a great place. But it did try and transcend politics and create stories that would have universal appeal to people on whatever side of the political aisle. And I think that's definitely something it was trying to do. And now the exact opposite is true, is that it's mired in today's identity politics, which means that in 5 or 10 years, those Star Trek episodes are going to be horribly dated. They're going to feel they don't transcend the time in which they are made. And I think that's happening with everything. You know, I mean, you're trying to change the fundamental nature of what these things are, and the whole reason you became a fan of them in the first place. And when they're being changed by, that's not to say things can't grow, but if they're no longer what they started out as, because people are literally changing them to fall more along the line, like the problem that I have is even when Berman took over Star Trek, he was trying to adhere to the principles that Roddenberry set up during the original series. He wasn't trying to change them based on what was going on that day. They were trying to still tell universal stories that transcended the time in which they were told, that were dealing with basic human truths. And I think that's the problem with what everything. Everybody's trying to make everything topical now to appeal to the here and the now, but not the here and the now on a universal scale. They're doing it. It no longer is trying to appeal to everybody. It's no longer dealing with basic human truths. It's very directed truth, and truth that is of the here and the now, that it doesn't transcend its time. And it's strange. It's weird. I mean, I didn't do a very good job of explaining it, but Justin Toner's here. Hello, Justin. Hi, Rob. Thanks for tweeting out the Tremors Making of documentary on YouTube. I watched it and loved it. It's going to be in the special features of the upcoming Tremors 4K and regular Blu-ray from Arrow in December, and I can't wait to buy it. What Justin is talking about, they have been dumping making of documentaries on YouTube, and this documentary, Tremors Making Perfection, is absolutely, it's from the upcoming Tremors set that's coming out. It's this beautifully shot documentary. It's short, but I thought it was really well done. And as somebody who spent 20 years of my life making behind the scenes making of documentaries, I thought it's been a long time since I've seen a new documentary that I thought was a really great piece of work. And it's on YouTube. If you like Tremors, they interview a lot of the people involved, and I thought it was great. Again, it's called Tremors Making Perfection. So if you're interested in Tremors, check it out, because it's really good, and it's 30 minutes of your time. And I mean, it bums me out they're not even waiting anymore. They have this documentary there. Maybe it's promoting the 4K release, but it didn't really say that. They're just putting it all out. They're putting all of these special features out that you used to only be able to get on physical media. Now they're just dumping them onto YouTube. And to be fair, I did that as well. So if you haven't looked, if you haven't seen it, let me put in the live chat. I'll put the Bill Sadler, the actor. I put one of the documentaries from The Hills Run Red, the Bill Sadler interview that I did. I'm going to put that, and I put that on YouTube as well. If you're not going to buy The Hills Run Red, and if you're not, what's wrong with you? But here is the documentary that it's a documentary piece. It's like 17 minutes long that I did about Bill Sadler. So check that out. Alexander Wilson is here and says, another Alec Peters Axanar rant. We need a death match between R&B and Alec Peters like now. It wasn't really so much a rant. I was just answering questions. But yeah, no, Alec Peters has cost me a lot of money and a lot of grief, and has cost the people that live in my household a lot of undue stress for, no other reason than he likes to inflict pain on people. He tries to sue people to get them to settle, to give him money, and he preys on people that he doesn't think have the wherewithal to stand up to him, that can't hire lawyers and things like that. So one of the things that we're doing about this documentary is we're building in the legal fees, because we know inevitably he will come after us and sue us again and again and again. He's threatened to sue me again. He threatened to sue me in a live stream a couple of weeks ago. Now, the thing is, when he threatens that, he will come after you and do that, which means you have to hire a lawyer and to answer his horribly written briefs or whatever the hell he does. He writes his own briefs because he says he's a lawyer by training. He's never been trained as a lawyer. He went to school to be a lawyer, and he passed the bar like almost 40 years ago, like 33 years ago or something. But then he files these horribly written briefs that have all kinds of typos. I mean, read what he's doing to Paul Jenkins right now. Paul Jenkins, who was on our show Friday. Paul Jenkins, who whose wife had brain surgery that Paul had to make sure he could cover. And that's when Alec Peters sued him. So that's the kind of person he is. I have no interest in having a death match, but I do have an interest in making a documentary about the entire experience, and also on the larger level, what it all means. What does toxic fandom mean? Whether you're talking about Comicsgate, Gamergate, sports fans, anybody who's a rabid fan of anything, why is there so much toxicity now in fandom? Why are there so many divisions? It'll be interesting, I think, to jump in. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes Robservations episode number 538. I will be back on the John Campea show tomorrow. I will also do this show tomorrow, and then tomorrow night we are doing another whining about movies, but this time about the original Friday the 13th. That's right. It's going to be tomorrow and not tonight. We did 2 whining about movies in a row, and quite frankly, I can't drink another bottle of wine. I mean, I could, but I probably shouldn't. So that's what we're doing, and then we have whining about movies tomorrow, and then wait, where did I put it? So we have Friday the 13th. Oh, I don't know where the list went. Damn it. Oh well. I'll figure it out. Let's see. Friday the 13th. I don't know what's next on our list. Why am I drawing a blank? I don't know. I'll figure it out. But anyway, our Halloween month continues. But we'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow. I want to thank. Did I just see? First of all, as you know, we have a number of new moderators here. I thought I just saw Purple Valkyrie. We have a new moderator, Purple Valkyrie. Purple Valkyrie is here. Once again, I like to say, like Marion Blaylock in The Hunger, when Marion Blaylock puts David Bowie, the aged, decrepit David Bowie, up with all of her other lovers. Marion Blaylock says, please take care of him. Well, I welcome our new moderator, Purple Valkyrie. Take care of her. Don't give her a hard time, or she'll drop the ban hammer on you. No, I'm just kidding. She's awesome. I want to thank Mike Bodden. I want to thank Greg Smith. I want to thank The Richard. Remember, The Richard is always throwing watch parties over on the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page. MC Blackcap is here. Another new moderator. I can't even speak. Bunyan Snipe from the UK is here. Robert Pariso is here. It is just a potpourri of moderators, which is fantastic. So I want to thank them for all the work they do. I want to remind everybody that the Imagination Connoisseur Film Festival is going on. It continues to go on until December 1st. That's when we close the entries. And we'll be seeing another movie from one of our own, Trinidad the Island Man. But as I said, bring your hankies. And you're going to want to give him a hug after you watch his movie. I'm just saying. That's going to be dropping this week. And, of course, we're going to start the next contest, which is going to be to design the cover of the anthology. Hey, how many YouTube channels are going to publish an anthology of viewers' work? The book is called The Imagination Connoisseurs. And the cover design contest goes from December 2nd to December 31st. And the story contest, remember, the stories have to be between 5,000 and 10,000 words. 5,000 and 10,000 words. I mean, that means you can have a 5,001. If you want to write a story that's 4,872 words, I'm probably not going to, we're going to edit them anyway. So, but 5,000 to 10,000 words. The stories will be due Valentine's Day, the 14th of February. And so we're going to take one of those stories and we're going to make it into a movie. And we are going to shoot that movie between March and May 15th. It's going to drop. Actually, the movie's going to drop on May 15th. So pre-production will begin right away. And we are going to make a movie on this channel. And I will take you on that journey. We'll probably do live shows from the set of whatever we're going to shoot, wherever we're going to shoot it. Who knows? It hasn't been written yet. So we shall see. All of those things are coming up here on the Burnettwork. So I never usually ask for you to like and subscribe, but do that. And becoming a member on this channel is going to help fund these endeavors that we are doing, because we are going to publish this book and print them up nice and all of those things. So that's kind of why when we hit 30,000 subscribers, we could open up that membership section. That's what we want to do. With your support, we're going to be able to run these contests and make these cool things. And I don't think it's going to help us finance a movie. I don't know how long, I don't know where that money's going to come from, but we'll figure that out when we come to it. That's part of producing, and we'll keep you abreast. You'll have to figure out that with us because you guys will be the studio. You'll even be able to look at dailies and all that. That'll be the fun thing that we're going to do. The whole filmmaking process, we're going to have for the members and stuff, and everybody watching, we're going to have different things happening. So it's going to be fun. But it's all up to you guys. It's only as good as what you deliver to us. And I'm really having fun with the film festival. And there's been a couple of crazy things that have dropped recently that you're going to see shortly. So anyway, I want to thank you all for supporting the channel through your generous help, whether you're a member, whether you send us super chats or tips. I really appreciate it. It keeps the channel going. And we're going to be doing more and more things with the channel, which is going to be fun. I mean, I can't wait to do a show. It's been so long since I've done a show like out in the wild. But we're going to do that. And there's even going to be some imagination connoisseurs who work in the industry that I'm going to tap. They don't know that yet, but I'm going to get them to come and work on this movie, whatever it is. Hopefully we'll be shooting it over. I mean, I don't think it's going to take more than 2 days, but I don't know what it's going to be. It might take 2 weekends, but who knows? Who knows? I don't know. Anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. And remember, everybody, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day.